everyone. Please, if you haven't, like and subscribe to the Book Peddler YouTube channel. More book reviews slash summaries to come, as well as book picks, antique picks, and weekly videos of what goes on in the life of a book peddler. The book I will give a summary slash review on today is titled Controlling the Human Mind, The Technologies of Political Control or Tools for Peak Performance by Dr. Nick Begich. This book was published in 2006, and it remains a book I have continuously referenced when in conversation with people in regards to technological advancements, what has come before, and potentially what the future will bring, as well as the more general concerns pertaining to those who are financing, producing, and controlling this technology to influence and control the direction of humanity as a whole, be it their thoughts, movements, independence, and freedoms. Technology is a double-edged sword. It can expand and improve upon our productivity, our minds, our health, and general well-being, but it can also inhibit, manipulate, and control behaviors, change social and cultural norms, and physically and psychologically affect us in unhealthy, damaging ways. It can either enslave us or advance us. This book takes on both aspects: the sinister, secretive side of technological experimentation on the public, which is heavily referenced with declassified documents as well as public documentation and open discourse on programs governments have been a part of in the past. Begich also produces the registered patents to some of this technology, and of course, if it is patented, it is a technology that has been proven to work. The book also explores the great potential these technological advancements have made, and that they could indeed help improve the human condition and positively advance humanity as a whole. This book does not speculate on the possibility that some of this technology exists, but that it does indeed exist and has existed longer than most would think. It will be up to the public to educate themselves, digest this information, weigh the research, and try to stand on a more grounded and informed position as to the pros and cons of this technology and what the course of action should best be when discussing implementation, human rights issues, constitutional issues, etc. Unfortunately, there seems to be a lack of public discourse and a general ignorance of the information being presented in this book. Most are very complacent when it comes to topics such as this. Hopefully this will change sooner than later. Begich does a great job in raising concerns and properly questioning the dangers of this technology. It is obvious to anyone reading the book of his deep concerns for humanity's future, as this new tech is infiltrating our daily lives and in many ways being blindly accepted unquestionably by the public. Begich has an impressive resume. I pulled this from his website, earthpulse.com, which I will link below for those interested in learning more about his work. So a bit of his background. Dr. Nick Begich is the eldest son of the late United States Congressman from Alaska, Nick Begich Sr., and political activist Peggy Begich. He is well known in Alaska for his political activities. He was twice elected president of both the Alaska Federation of Teachers and the Anchorage Council of Education. He has been pursuing independent research in the sciences and politics for most of his adult life. Begich received Doctor of Medicine honoris causa for independent work in health and political science from the Open International University for Complementary Medicines, Colombo, Sri Lanka, in November 1994. He co-authored with Gene Manning the book Angels Don't Play This Harp, Advances in Tesla Technology, which has to do with the HARP project in Alaska. Begich has also authored Earth Rising, The Revolution Toward 1,000 Years of Peace, and his latest book, Earth Rising II, The Betrayal of Science, Society, and the Soul, both with the late James Roderick. Begich has published articles in science, politics, and education, and is a well-known lecturer. Having presented throughout the United States and in 19 countries, he has been featured as a guest on thousands of radio broadcasts, reporting on his research activities, including new technologies, health and earth science-related issues. He has also appeared on dozens of television documentaries and other programs throughout the world, including BBC TV, CBC TV, Telemundo, and others. Begich has served as an expert witness and speaker before the European Parliament. He has spoken on various issues for groups representing citizen concerns, statesmen, and elected officials, scientists, and others. He is the publisher and co-owner of Earth Pulse Press. He served as tribal administrator/village planner for the Chickaloon Village Council, a federally recognized American Indian tribe of the Athabascan Indian Nation, for 5 years and served 4 years as the executive director of the Lay Institute of Technology Incorporated, a Texas non-for-profit corporation. Currently, Begich consults for tribal organizations, private corporations, and others in a number of research areas. So Begich is no slouch. He's well-researched and well-versed in this field of study. He's articulate. His conclusions are well-reasoned and respected. I have decided to select from the book some of the technology Begich writes on to give a better idea of what is going on in the ever-expanding world of the tech field. Keep in mind, this book was published in 2006. Much of the technology in this book at this point is antiquated and probably in some cases obsolete. It has been undoubtedly refined and has become even more sophisticated in its form of implementation as well as its advancement in ability and its creation process. What I found really interesting as well was the technology that was being created in the 50s and the experimentations going on that would still strike many as science fiction in today's modern world. Something that hasn't changed is the recognition and use by the military and governments throughout the world in implementing this on the battlefield and of course testing it on their own populations. This kind of technology is the future of warfare according to the military sectors involved in researching and creating much of the tech. Begich pulls from published military documents the projections and attitudes towards the future use of this technology. And I will start with these projections before getting into the tech that has existed. In terms of psychotronic warfare, Begich pulls a source produced by the Scientific Advisory Board of the Air Force, who did a study projecting the future of weaponry in the 21st century, published in 1996. Quote, "One can envision the development of electromagnetic energy sources, the output of which can be pulsed, shaped, and focused, that can couple with the human body in a fashion that will allow one to prevent voluntary muscular movements, control emotions, and thus actions, produce sleep, transmit suggestions, interfere with both short-term and long-term memory, produce an experience set, and delete an experience set. It would also appear possible to create high-fidelity speech in the human body, raising the possibility of covert suggestion and psychological direction. When a high-power microwave pulse in the gigahertz range strikes the human body, a very small temperature perturbation occurs. This is associated with a sudden expansion of slightly heated tissue. This expansion is fast enough to produce an acoustic wave. If a pulse stream is used, it should be possible to create an internal acoustic field in the 5 to 15 kilohertz range, which is audible. Thus, it may be possible to, quote, talk to selected adversaries in a fashion that would be most disturbing to them, end quote." The quotes above by the Advisory Board of the Air Force was again a projection and vision of things to come. Well, it has come to be. To reiterate, they are talking about the direct manipulation of emotions through frequency waves that interact with the brain and body, the ability to control emotions, behaviors, and thoughts, the ability to wipe out memories and create new ones. These systems do indeed exist. They have been used before, and again, I will later in this summary review pull the patents and the documented times that they are known to have been used. Before I do this, however, his very next chapter is titled "The Mind Has No Firewall." Now, that heading was directly pulled from the U.S. Army War College, in which a magazine called Parameters published in the spring of 1998 an article. And this article talks about the future of warfare and the systems being created to manipulate human behavior. Quoting directly from the Army War College, quote, "Yet the body is capable not only of being deceived, manipulated, or misinformed, but also shut down or destroyed. Just as any other data processing system, the data the body receives from external sources, such as electromagnetic, vortex, or acoustic energy waves, or creates through its own electrical or chemical stimuli, can be manipulated or changed just as the data information in any hardware system can be altered," end quote. Our brains are like computers. They take in and process information, input and output. However, unlike a computer, our brains have no firewall to protect us from this new technology that can implant, quote, viruses to interfere, control, and dictate our thought processes. These new systems can replicate and synchronize with our brainwave frequency and manipulate them. This new tech that will be explored soon in this review can direct and focus a wave of energy straight to a targeted individual. The privacy within our own minds is subject now to extreme exposure, and influence that can destroy our free will and also physically harm us and even kill us. In this same article published by Parameters, it discusses the work of a Russian research scientist of the Bauman Technical Institute in Moscow by the name of Dr. Viktor Soltsev. He examined the issues of, in quotes, information noise. In paraphrasing this section of the book, it is stated that our physical environment can cause changes within our bodies and mind when stimulated. Noise can be created in the form of signals, imagery, and messages that can specifically target an individual or group that can destabilize the victim. According to Soltsev, a computer virus has already been created called Russian Virus 666, which can affect the user's mind and body. Quote, this virus appears in every 25th frame of a computer's visual display, where a mix of color, pulse, and patterns are reported to put computer operators into a trance. The subconscious perception of the display can be used to induce a heart attack or to subtly manage or change a computer's operator's perceptions. This same system could be used in any television or visual broadcast. One thing that came to my mind after reading this was an event that happened in the 90s. Hundreds of Japanese children started convulsing and going into epileptic shock when a children's show was broadcast over the airwaves. Now, I'm not claiming that the programmers of the show or the television broadcast system that aired it had nefarious intentions, but it is a clear example how when the frequency of the flicker rate was changed, in combination of particular colors being used, the reactions of these children, in which there were no previously known cases reported amongst any of them of being epileptic to begin with, went into a shock brought on by the program. So in the link below, I will list a New York Times article in the description so that you can read it for yourself on this particular event. So in the same chapter, Begich includes a U.S. News and World Report article published on July 7, 1997, that reveals scientists were seeking specific energy patterns which could be externally applied to the bodies of individuals for the purpose of modifying their behavior. Begich says, quote, the most powerful weapon systems will be those which populations through the use of these energy fields that trick the body and mind into reacting as if the signals were normal and natural. These systems can also be used to create total disorientation in people and cause mystery illnesses, as well as be used to induce, at a distance, heart failure or significant respiratory distress, among other things, end quote. So this technology is being actively worked on and perfected. Begich believes, and I think rightfully so, that these new forms of technology in the wrong hands of a repressive regime will expand in power to where we are at the mercy of our rulers. How will this technology be brought in so that we come to accept it? Well, through conditioning the public ahead of time, via movies, television programs, finance, government scientists, and so-called experts in the field, as well as law enforcement officials and politicians promoting and normalizing the usage of this new technology. Usually, it will come as convincing the public that it is for their own good, and in the name of a safer society, it will firstly be used against a criminal element within society. It will also be demonstrated and sold to the public in a favorable light of making our lives easier and perhaps less stressful, catering to our wants and needs. To question this would be a form of heresy. Shaming tactics would be deployed from our neighbors, friends, and family who have unquestionably accepted the new technology. You must be anti-progressive, anti-technology. You're a caveman, a throwback. Get with the times. You're paranoid. Anything to bring the individual back in line with the group think of the rest of the herd and to stifle any form of debate. These tactics are effective. It'll be couched as human enhancing, only to be in usage to root our enemies out, enemies foreign and domestic. Should we trust this? Of course not. History continuously proves that militaries are turned on their own people, that power corrupts, and we would be foolish to believe we are exempt from this. And without checks and balances in the rapidly growing fields of psychotronic warfare technology, AI technology, nanotech, etc., we could potentially be looking into a dark dystopian future. Even Elon Musk, who is at the forefront of this technology, and associates in circles obviously that are part of its creation, specifically, of course, with the AI tech, has stated on multiple occasions that there has to be oversight from Congress over these programs. His words are going unheeded, however, And at some point, we may find ourselves at the mercy of those who finance and control this technology. And just to be clear, Begich doesn't get into AI tech nor nanotech. His focus is on the psychotronic tech within this book. So Begich talks about the technology which has been tracking, tracing, and monitoring our movements that exist in the past and are continuously expanding into current day. From cell phones to televisions, cell towers, RFID chips, even smart appliances, things that were considered conspiratorial for years have been out in the open just as long. Companies openly admit the capabilities of the new tech systems, and whistleblowers within the NSA and other government facilities have spoken up. Most under court ordered were gagged and persecuted. There is currently so much information out there to research that it can be overwhelming at times. I'll link up NSA whistleblower William Binney, who exposed NSA database collecting before Edward Snowden ever came to be. Google the NSA database in Washington State or keywords on your TV spying on you. Articles will come up, and companies themselves admit to putting in backdoor systems to spy on their users. This is not conspiracy, it's a fact. I do not want to oversaturate this review with so much outside information, but it all applies properly to what is being spoken of in Begich's book, and if one is interested enough, can find out for themselves how far the rabbit hole goes. When it comes, however, to individuals currently being harassed by this technology, there is a term being used called targeted individuals. These people display in various degrees of symptoms of paranoid, psychotic, schizophrenic people. They hear voices in their head. They seclude themselves. It has driven some to suicide, and these people are claiming to be assaulted basically by military weaponry, and indeed exhibit and display the cruel, uncomfortable, life-draining effects that Begich talks about in the book that some of these technologies are capable of. So you can do a general search on the computer on Google and read about targeted individuals, or TIs for short, and listen to their accounts. Vice News also did an hour program on this phenomenon. Thousands of people around the world are complaining about being violated by this technology. Many of these people, from what I can tell, previously lived normal lives beforehand, but have had extreme breakdowns in some cases over this. Another term being used is gang stalking. Very interesting stuff and worth checking into. And, I'm sorry to divert, but I believe this is all relatable. There have been many cases of unethical human experimentation on the public throughout this country's history. So for me, this would come as no surprise if the community of targeted individuals or those being gang stalked are indeed being electronically harassed. From the Tuskegee experiments to human radiation, biological warfare experiments to MK Ultra and Project Mockingbird, one can go on and on, digging up this historical, factual information of human experimentation country. So let's get back to the book more so and cover some of the patented technologies that do indeed exist. So U.S. patent number 515703, silent subliminal presentation system, patented on October 22nd, 1992. The inventor was Oliver Lowry, and this patent, quote, concerns the use of either very low or very high frequency audio signals for delivering subliminal information. This invention was indeed to A, provide a technique for producing a subliminal presentation which is inaudible to listeners, yet is perceivable and demodulated, in other words, decoded by the ear for use by the subconscious mind. B, to provide a technique for producing inaudible subliminal information to the listener or listeners at a constant high level of signal strength and on a clear band of frequencies. C, to provide a technique for producing inaudible subliminal presentations to which music or other foreground programming may be added if desired, end quote. Begich states, quote, this system bypasses the conscious mind and drops the information into the subconscious in a manner that avoids any conscious filtering of the information. The information without conscious review may, in fact, set up conflicts in the listener's belief systems. The messages may not line up with the way the individual person thinks, which can lead to a number of emotional and psychological problems, end quote. As Begich states, whoever is being exposed to this should be able to know and filter what is coming through, to digest and evaluate new incoming information for those, and in their own mind determine if it as being right or wrong. To have thoughts forcefully implanted is unethical, and as stated, will potentially and most likely have harmful effects on one's psyche. Now look at the benefits of a technology like this could have as well. It could help someone quit smoking or drinking, reduce stress levels. Two patents covered in the book before the one previously mentioned was created by a man named Robert Monroe, who developed audio materials for use of behavior modification by sending a pulsing signal that interacts with one's brain waves through a headset to improve the human condition and change negative behavior. Again, this technology is a double-edged sword. So this wireless technology has been worked upon and refined for years. And one of Begich's chapters, titled Dr. Jose Delgado, Mapping the Human Brain, Begich briefly enters the world of Dr. Delgado, who is a professor and director of physiology at Yale University. He pioneered advances in controlling human behavior and understanding the human mind. In the 60s, Delgado and his team experimented on controlling one of the most aggressive animals on Earth, the bull. They connected a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain and were able to remotely stop the bull mid-charge by the push of a button, drastically and abruptly altering its aggressive natural behavior and proclivities. I'll link up a video you can watch below of the experiment, which is only a minute and a half long. In the same video, Delgado says how they are now experimenting with this behavior modification wirelessly without the use of electrodes on monkeys. He can manipulate brains from a distance by oscillating and vibrating energy to the brain in specific ways. This technology has existed longer than most think. So, where does a man like Delgado stand when it comes to humanity having a free will and freedom of thought and expression? Well, here's a quote I found when Delgado spoke to Congress and was put into the Congressional Record, number 26, volume 118, on February 24th, 1974. Quote, "We need a program of psychosurgery for political control of our society. The purpose is physical control of the mind. Everyone who deviates from the given norm can be surgically mutilated. The individual may think that the most important reality is his own existence, but this is only his personal point of view. This lacks historical perspective. Man does not have the right to develop his own mind. This kind of liberal orientation has great appeal. We must electrically control the brain. Someday armies and generals will be controlled by electric stimulation of the brain." End quote. The brazenness and boldness of this man to act as God is disturbing. Imperfect man cannot create a perfect order or world. And the attitude and implication of this is deadly, ultimately. Delgado was also part of the heavily controversial MK Ultra experiments on human beings. This technology, again, has been refined and expanded upon throughout the years. And judging by the Delgado quote above, in tangent with the secretive, intrusive, dangerous, unethical programs he was involved in, it becomes pretty revealing and apparent what side of the line these people stand on when it comes to the social and political ramifications of control they wish to exert upon the public as a whole. So the question is posed by Begich in the first paragraph of Chapter 5, titled Auditory Effects. Quote, "Is it possible to transmit a signal to the brain of a person from a distance which deposits specific sounds, voice, or other information which is understandable to them? Is it possible to transfer sound in a way where only the targeted person can hear the voice in the head and no one else hears a thing? Is it possible to person's emotions using remote electromagnetic tools?" The answer to each of these questions is a resounding yes. The state of science has passed even the most optimistic predictions, and the capabilities are here now. On February 5th, 1998, Begich, while giving testimony to the European Parliament titled HARP and Non-Lethal Weapons, demonstrated a particular device to the astonishment of those in attendance. Also, I cannot find the video, but Begich on live Canadian TV in front of a crowd used a device that transmitted a voice into the center of the head of those in attendance. So you'll have to try to look that one up for yourself. But this technology has been documented as being used on the battlefield and is referenced in the book. During the Gulf War, Iraqis were exposed to this so-called non-lethal brain manipulation when they gave up their arms en masse. I will quote the entire page for this one. Quote, What the voice of the Gulf began broadcasting, along with prayers from the Quran and testimonials from well-treated Iraqi prisoners, was a precise information on the units to be bombed each day, along with a new silent psychological technique which induced thoughts of great fear in each soldier's mind. According to statements made by captured and deserting Iraqi soldiers, however, the most devastating and demoralizing programming was the first known military use of the new high-tech type of subliminal messages referred to as ultra-high frequency silent sounds or silent subliminals. The use of these new techniques went well beyond the injection of fear and may have involved more powerful signal generators which cause the other symptoms that the world observed, including head pain, bleeding from the nose, disorientation, and nausea, all possible with so-called non-lethal weapons. The Project Commando Solo, run by the United States Air Force, is a C-130 aircraft that is used as a broadcasting platform sent into war zones in advance of troops to condition the adversary with propaganda of the traditional type and also to deliver other mind/emotion altering technology literally carried on the airwaves. These questions now remain. Are they still using the techniques like an electronic camp in order to control the population? Is this part of the way in which modern governments will suppress, quote, rogue nations or their own populations? Is it possible that some other nation, corporation, or individual might use these technologies to launch a, quote, preemptive war on the West, end quote? So I will also link up in the description below an article on the Voice of God technology from Wired.com that goes with the above quotation. So here's another example of the usage of this technology in an article titled Mind Control Music, Stop Shoplifters by Peter McGill, published in the Sydney Morning Herald on February 4th, 1995. Quote, Japanese shopkeepers are playing CDs, have soundtracks of popular music, or ocean waves with encoded voices in 7 languages, warning that anyone caught stealing will be reported to the police. A number of patents have been developed to influence behavior this way. Begich goes on about how this equipment is developed and how it operates in the brain. It can be used with over television airwaves and can be specified messaging for individual users. So back on the Japanese thing, real quick, I read years ago that there was a small town up north, I believe in Vermont, but it could have been in the state of Maine. Memory serves correctly, I believe it was in Vermont, where for a week they were playing music to the town, or they were actually, they're directing energy waves onto the town, and 1 week crime went up, assaults went up, and then the next week they changed the frequency, and there was like peace on earth in that town. Now, I don't have the case number, but the town actually found out about this going on and sued the state, and I'm not sure what happened. And if anybody has information on that, I'd love to see it, because I've had extreme difficulty finding the information on this case, although I definitely believe it's out there, but I couldn't find it. Maybe I'm not using the right keywords on Google, but it is a documented case that happened years ago in, I believe, the state of Maine. But anyhow, to get back onto this topic, quote, the idea of changing brain activity, even our own thoughts, is the stuff of modern science and no longer the imaginings of science fiction writers, end quote. Someone quote again from Begich, who pulls this information directly from the patents themselves. Quote, in 1996 came this Orwellian development, a method for remotely determining information relating to a person's emotional state as a waveform energy having a predetermined frequency and a predetermined intensity is generated and wirelessly transmitted towards a remotely located subject. Waveform energy emitted from the subject is detected and automatically analyzed to derive information relating to the individual's emotional state. Physiological or physical parameters of blood pressure, pulse rate, pupil size, respiration rate, and perspiration level are measured and compared with reference values to provide information utilized in evaluating interviewees' responses or possibly criminal intent in security-sensitive areas, end quote. Let that sink in for a moment. This technology is patented and was developed in the mid-90s. It evaluates behaviors and goes directly into the person's mind to analyze what is going on with it. So I know that there's been movies out, sci-fi movies on thought crime and predicting thought crime. And actually, again, there's an article about a case in Britain where someone was basically charged for a crime before it even happened. So it's pretty creepy stuff. But, scientists are mapping the mind, and they are perfecting, if not already, how to shift the brain's energy patterns and bend it at will. Begich talks about about a Russian doctor named Smirnov, who is considered the father of psychotropic weapons in Russia. And there was an article published on him in which he talks about how he has been able to create a Manchurian candidate by splitting the victim's personality and creating a new one that can be programmed to kill. Through mass subliminals, can bypass the conscious mind and infect the subconscious. This was in the 1980s, mind you. So it's incredible stuff that Begich is documented, and it's on the public arena for you to see it for yourself. This book was packed with information. Begich has compiled one of the most informative, comprehensive, accessible works on the topic. I've given you but a smattering of his research. It's easy to become overwhelmed with reading something like this. It's unsettling, and knowing about the existence of such technology and pairing it all together, one could develop an unhealthy, dismal attitude towards humanity's future in general. It could render the reader with feelings of helplessness and utter dejection. Use the information to empower you, however, and try and live life in accordance with what you know. Information is power. Don't allow it to disable you. I recommend everyone who has interest in this material to listen to some of the programs Begich has been interviewed on, which you can find on YouTube. And definitely buy the book and read it for yourself. It's not overly technical, and he does an excellent job breaking down any technicalities and explaining what was said in layman's terms for the general reader. Pick up a copy of this book. Reality is much stranger than fiction. This book is a clear example of that. And much thanks to Dr. Begich for the great work he's done. So that's the end of my summary/review. I tried to pick out interesting points that I found in the book, and I thought that you may as well. But I ask you, please like and subscribe to the channel for more book reviews, book picks, and an inside look into the life of Book Peddler. So thank you for listening.